morning, Mary. How are you today?
Very well, Dr. Singleton. I hope you are.
I am. Thanks for asking. Are you ready to tell me what happened?
Yes, I am.
Okay, then. Why don't you start from the beginning?
Okay, well, it wasn't a dark and stormy night.
It wasn't a dark and stormy night?
No.
And what was it that made you feel like you needed to preface your story with, it wasn't a dark and stormy night?
Because that's always how these kinds of stories start. And I want to tell my story the way it is, not how everyone else expects it to be.
Well, that's perfectly fine, Mary. You tell your story how you see fit.
That's what I intend to do. It wasn't a dark and stormy night. It was a cool, misty February night, right before the rain. I remember it as a scene from an Alfred Hitchcock movie or an old love story, just before the two lovers part forever. The drivers on the highway made their way to their destination, each lost in personal thought, oblivious to the fact that the little white Mazda they passed on that road contained the lifeless body of a person who just hours before had been very much alive. But one rarely ponders the contents of neighboring vehicles on the road home. Do you?
Well, I suppose not, but you said something about a lifeless body?
Of course not. There's just the senseless need to go from point to point to point, only to retrace the exact same course again the very next day. Why?
Well, that's a very good question, Mary. Why?
Y2K didn't amount to much. It wasn't what the paranoid people claimed it to be. You know, those people that stocked up on bottled water and propane and groceries. A neighbor of ours went so far as to build a greenhouse and started raising rabbits and chickens for food, all on his little city lot, right across from a cul-de-sac. We always thought he was a little quirky, but he was a friend, so we overlooked his obsession. And we didn't mind the fresh parsley he gave to us every week either.
Fresh parsley, you say?
Yes. Of all the things he grew in that little greenhouse, was just about anything he could fit, the one thing he had an overabundance of was parsley. Nothing came of Y2K. The worst incident I know of that was caused by Y2K was that a man was inadvertently charged $185,000 for overdue movie rentals. I wonder if he forgot to rewind them too.
Well, I think maybe.
Well, you know, most people nowadays don't even understand the concept of rewinding a movie, do they?
I suppose not the younger generation.
I turned 40 in the year 2000. Some people would say it was a midlife crisis or some such. That's what made me do it. But you yourself know there is no definitive evidence that there's even such a thing as a midlife crisis. And I didn't have any desire to run off with my fitness instructor or get a red sports car. Although, I wouldn't necessarily have turned either of those things down if they'd been offered to me. Would you?
Well,
of course not. No, it wasn't a midlife crisis that made me do it. Freedom. That's what made me do it. That is, a lack of freedom. Funny thing is, I didn't even realize I didn't have any freedom. Well, that's what brainwashing will do to a person. Can you imagine what it's like to have no control over your life? To have no say in where you live or what you wear or even how you spend your free time? Even how you feel or think? To have no identity of your own? Well, it can drive a person mad. I know that from experience, of course, but I'm not using that as an excuse, not in the least. I strongly believe in personal responsibility, and I am not blaming my illness for what happened that February night. And what did happen that February night, you're wondering?
well, actually, I kind of was.
I'll get to that. You know, I always had thoughts of going into psychology. Of course, I always saw myself behind the desk instead of on the couch, but oh well. If I was behind the desk, I'd be a lot more affluent, but being on the couch, I'm a lot happier. Having a nervous breakdown is good for a person. It relieves stress. When one goes insane, everyone's expectations dramatically decrease. You can do whatever the hell you want, and no one will be disappointed in you or condemn you. And that is a great feeling. Very peaceful. I have no burdens, no worries, no complicated thoughts crowding my brain. I'm not trying to rush around juggling my career life and my sex life and my social life and my family life, all just to please every single person in the world, even those people I haven't even met yet. That's what you do, isn't it?
Well, we're not here to talk about me. We're here to talk about...
Well, you should try going crazy once. You'd love it. I promise. You'd be surprised.
So, do you think you are as crazy as you say?
You'd be surprised how easy it is to fit a body into the trunk of a Mazda 626. It's more roomy than you think when you fold down the back seats. Funny, they never talk about how easy it is to put bodies in trunks in any of those automobile commercials. They just talk about groceries, camping gear, golden retrievers, but no bodies. Well, I guess that wouldn't be very good marketing though, would it?
I suppose not.
You know, I never really noticed how lovely this room is. It's elegant, it's simple, like you. I especially like these curtains. They're a lovely shade of blue. They remind me of the ocean. Do you know I had never been to the ocean until just last week? And I'm almost 60 years old. My parents were too busy to take me as a kid, and he didn't like the beach. He said it was too sandy and too windy, and he refused to take me. Of course, I didn't have any way to go myself. I didn't have a car, driver's license back then. Even if I'd found a way to go, he'd have found a way to prevent me from going. He would have said, it's just a bunch of water, you're not missing anything. He had a real problem. Funny thing is, everyone thinks I had the problem when actually he did. But he doesn't have those problems anymore, does he? Nope. I took care of all that. I took care of all his problems and mine as well, in one swoop. I met him when I was just 16. I thought he was going to take me away from all my problems, all my childhood pain, not top them. But that's what he did. He topped them. You think it was my husband, don't you?
Well,
Or the
actually,
body in the Mazda. Well, I didn't even mention anything about being married.
That's right, you didn't.
People are always jumping to conclusions. That's a very dangerous thing to do. Like when you assume because someone is married they're not lonely, or just because someone has children that they're a good parent, or just because there's a dead body in a trunk there's been a murder.
Of course. Go on.
I'm not saying there wasn't a murder. I'm just saying don't jump to conclusions. I had big plans, big hopes, big dreams. I think. I can't really remember them right now, but I know that when you're a kid, you think you can do anything, that you can be anything. But then life smacks you hard in the face.
Yes, it has a way of doing that, doesn't it?
I knew that this was my life and it wasn't ever going to get any better. This is your rut, I told myself. Get used to it. And I did. I got so used to it, I couldn't imagine my life outside the rut. There was nothing but rut. Rut and roots of an old oak tree poking through the sides of the rut. So I drank. And I drank and drank and drank. Till the rut didn't seem so dark and so dank.
Are you saying that this is how your substance abuse disorder began?
I never said I had a substance abuse disorder. You said that. It is not a problem when it helps you deal with things. It's not like I had a job that alcohol would have had a negative effect on. He wouldn't allow me the escape employment would have given me. And I only drank after the kids went to bed. So it didn't affect my parenting ability either. It just helped me cope.
Of course. We all need something to help us get through when things seem helpless.
For years, I went through life on automation, lifeless. Smiled a fake smile, laughed a fake laugh. It was easier that way. I was whatever he wanted me to be, which wasn't who I was at all. In all honesty, I'm not sure who I was. I hadn't been me for years. maybe I never really was me. But that's my fault. I was too passive, too weak, but not anymore. I know exactly who I am now, and I like me. Crazy you're saying? It doesn't matter. I like me. And that's what counts, right?
I suppose one could argue that.
And then one day, something happened that shook up my life inside the rut. He was reading the paper and he got a pain in his side. A very large pain. He needed emergency surgery. That time he spent in the hospital was the only time in our marriage that I wasn't walking around on edge.
So you were married?
Let me finish my story.
Oh, pardon me. Please go on.
He was soon to be released when he acquired a nasty infection and then double pneumonia. His situation became complicated, and they couldn't understand that how things could go so badly for him so quickly. It was peculiar, they said. He was moved to ICU, and the doctor came to see me in private. He had the look on his face. You know, the "I'm so sorry for your loss" look that the doctors and funeral home directors must take a special class for. I didn't tell him, "You don't need to waste that look on me." I didn't need it. And he said, "We're doing everything we can, Miss Claremont, but at this point, your husband's condition does not look hopeful." I tried hard to push back those horrible thoughts inside my head, but no matter how hard I tried, the thoughts were still there, lingering in the dark recesses of my mind. I pushed them back as far as I could, but I could never completely eradicate them. He eventually recovered and returned home, and everything went back to the way it was. Everything except a small part of me that had altered, just a little.
Something about that event changed you in some way?
Yes. And then it was Y2K, the year 2000, 2 days after my birthday. We had one of our huge fights that lasted all day and into the next. I ultimately locked myself into the bathroom. He'd eventually go away, but I knew it wouldn't last long.
Did he hurt you physically?
It'd been so much easier if he had. Could never get away physically. I had nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, so I escaped mentally. I would numb myself with rum, or if there was no alcohol in the house, I would find a safe space in my own little world where he couldn't reach me. And then I began having nightmares. I was being chased by someone or something. And in my dreams, I would find a safe space to hide for a short time, but I always woke up before I could get away. Well, just like in real life, he was there, ready to pounce on me.
Pounce on you?
Well, figuratively.
I see.
That night, after drinking a bottle of wine, I was laying in my bed with my head spinning, which is always the way I preferred my head to be. Any condition to the contrary, and it was just a painful acknowledgement of my reality, which I could never appropriately deal with. I guess it came on slowly over the years, but it felt like it happened all at once. I stumbled into the bathroom, and as I passed the mirror, I looked at myself. At first, I was gaping at the newest gray hairs and wondering if cucumbers really would work as I stared at the bags underneath my eyes. But then, I looked at myself for the first time. And I impulsively asked myself out loud, "What the hell are you doing?" And it dawned on me. This wasn't supposed to be my life.
So you had an aha moment.
I suppose you could call it that. I didn't like this life. This was not the life I was supposed to have. I discovered that my life was just a series of bad mistakes. I needed to start over. I had just been going along for the last 40 years with what everyone else wanted me to do. I wanted my freedom. I wanted to move to the country, go back to school, take a trip, live without fear. I wanted to decide what time to have dinner.
So you felt a lack of control in your life, even for things like the time for supper.
Yes. Every day it was 5 o'clock on the dot. Why not 5:11, 4:52? I couldn't even choose the color of that damn bathroom rug. I just sort of snapped.
You snapped?
And that night, I had an idea. It was obscured by the alcohol, but the feeling it elicited to me was powerful. I stayed up all night that night, imagining different scenarios. For the first time, there was hope. I smiled, the first of 1,000 smiles that had never been there before. Real smiles. It's so sad that someone had to die for a smile.
That is tragic.
Can't help but smile now when I think back up all those years. Who was I? Why didn't I do it sooner?
Do what sooner?
I'll get to that. I was setting the table for dinner, which was, of course, to be at 5 o'clock. I was so anxious as I folded the napkins. Can you believe that I used to use cloth napkins every day? Fold them into those cute little designs like they do at fancy restaurants. What woman does that? I'd make fans and bishop hats and lilies. Anyways, I oscillated between two thoughts. The first thought, it'll never work. I'm destined for the rut. And the second thought, it has to work. All those wasted years. Anytime I try to do something for myself, he'd explode into a diatribe of the importance of domesticity and the fall of Adam and Eve and 1,000 other things. And then he'd lose his temper. I just thought it was easier to go with the flow, his flow. But I was so excited about my new life. I started making plans. I started making lists of all the things that I was going to do. I still have that list. I was going to go buy some new clothes, the kind that he would never let me wear. I was going to go new places and make friends. I was going to move out of that cookie-cutter house that we lived in. I always hated tract homes. Our house was exactly the same as every other house. I wanted a house that was unique, that was my own. The thought crossed my mind more than once to paint the damn thing purple just to piss off the members of the Homeowners Association. Do I have any regrets? Sure I do. I should have made it look like an accident. That was my original plan, so I wouldn't have to hide the body. Hey, where are the chocolates that were here last week?
The chocolates?
Yeah, those were good. Not like this cheap candy you have in here today. With as much as you charge per hour, you think you could supply your clients some decent chocolates when they come in here. Some of these people you see are really disturbed. The only comfort they have is what's in your candy dish.
I'll see what I can do.
Thank you. My husband would never let me eat sweets. He said I was too fat. Well, now I can eat peanut butter cups out in the open all day long. I should have been smarter. Planned things better. But I just sort of cracked. Oh well. I hid the body where no one would ever find it. It was a lot easier than I thought. And now I'm free to eat chocolate, among other things.
And I don't suppose you want to tell me where it is that you hid him?
I'm afraid, Dr. Singleton, that our time is up, and I need to get ready for a painting class. And I'm going to pack for the beach. I'm going again this weekend.
That sounds nice, Mary.
Oh, do me a favor, will you? If that man shows up again claiming to be my husband, would you tell him that if he keeps insisting that he's my husband, I'll do to him what I did to my real husband? I don't think he'd like that. Do you?